Welcome to this short video introducing some of the features of the Nook HD Plus tablet, using it as an e-reader for a low vision reader. The first thing to say about most tablets is that you can have them in portrait or in landscape mode. This is a personal choice, but you can lock the rotation from the settings menu. We've got it in landscape mode, primarily because it fits our filming equipment better, but you can choose which way you have it. The Nook HD Plus is based on Android as the operating system, so that you have access to things like the Play Store, and this means that you can load all kinds of apps, including many ebook reading apps such as Kobo and the Kindle. The Nook HD Plus doesn't have the accessibility features that are incorporated in the latest versions of Android. So for instance, there's no magnification, which Android has system-wide now, and although text-to-speech is mentioned in the settings, there isn't any way, that I've found anyway, that you can turn it on or off. So we're going to be concentrating on the visual aspects of using the Nook HD Plus as an e-reader. The way that you open a book, there is a library app on the screen, and when you tap that, you get the books and magazines and films that you've previously purchased. And if I tap one of those books, it will open up into something called the Reader app. It comes up at a particular font size and shape, and if I'm not happy with that, I can tap the middle of the screen and a menu appears near the bottom. One of the buttons on the menu is an AA button, which is pretty well now the standard way of suggesting that there are font options to make. If I tap that button, the first thing to say is there's a Publisher Default button at the bottom right. If that is turned on, then none of the other features for changing the way that the text looks are available. So if that's on, the first thing you might want to do is turn it off, and then all the other features that are available on this screen are available to you. Along the top, there's a series of letter A's. The one in the middle, near the middle, is a slightly different color, which shows that that's the one that's currently in use. So for instance, if I wanted large text, I could tap on the A at the far right, and you might have been able to see that the text size changed behind the font screen that I have up. Another setting that some people might like is if you have a preference for a particular font or a particular font shape. Some people like, for instance, serif fonts, other people like sans serif fonts, and you can choose from a number of different fonts there to make the text a bit more legible. I'll just come off that font setting now so that you can see the way that the book has changed behind that font settings option. So I can now scroll through the book in the usual way and read it at a font size of my choice. There are a couple of other settings which you might want to change. The main one of these is the themes setting at the bottom right. There are 6 of these. 4 of them show you a different color background, and this could be useful if you have an issue with glare. Many of these tablets have quite shiny screens and glare can be an issue. So you can change the background color, or you can choose one of the 2 settings that actually gives you white text on a dark background. The one I've got now is dark grey, and there doesn't seem to be a way to get it to being actually black. I know some people would like a very black screen with white text. Essentially, we have a choice between brown and dark grey. 2 other minor changes that you might want to consider are line spacing and margins. You can scrunch the text up a little bit, or you can make the gap between the different lines larger. And in the same way, you can choose to have larger or smaller margins. And each of these, it's a trade-off between how much text you get on the screen and how easy you find it to read. One last setting that it might be worth showing is not actually found in the inside the Reader app. If I come out of the Reader app by pressing the N button, it's the only physical button on the front of the Nook HD Plus. I can turn on a voice setting by going to the main settings, all settings, and then with applications chosen at the left, I can tap on the Reader application, and there is an option here called Enable Accessibility, currently in beta. Beta basically means that it's unfinished, and we're going to see what that effect has in a moment when we go into a book. Now when I go back into my book through the library, I should find that as I open it, my current location is spoken.
Page 84 of 944.
The volume isn't as loud as it could be, but there is a headphone socket on the machine, so You could put a pair of headphones or maybe even an external set of speakers on here if you wished to. If I now tap the middle of the screen, the voice will read what's on the screen and the current sentence is highlighted. Because I have large font at the moment, there's less than one sentence on the screen. So let's see how it goes.
Entering auto mode, tearing a neighborhood. This truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of someone or other of their daughters. My dear Mr.
I can tap the screen again to pause the speech. The screen flips to show the text that's being read, but because the whole sentence is highlighted at any one time, it only changes when the highlight changes. And so again, you might have noticed that when it was reading the first sentence, it read quite a lot of the text that was on this screen before it actually flipped to the screen. With the speech turned on, I can tap and hold the middle of the screen.
Entering menu mode, menu table of contents.
And it brings up a little menu. It doesn't read it very well. What it said then was entering menu table of contents. I can now flick up and down the screen to move through this menu.
Menu go to bookmarks. Menu speech rate.
And on one of these, for instance, menu speech rate, I can double tap to start making a change to the rate of the speech.
Fling up and down to select the value.
What it said then was fling up or down to select the value. These are things that I call swipes. Some people call them flicks, but Nook's decided to call them flings. But as I swipe up the screen, the speed of the voice will change.
Speech rate changed.
In most cases where you have a voice like this, it will give you some value. It might have said speech rate 10 or 12. This doesn't, but you might be able to hear if I swipe up a few times that it is actually getting a little bit faster.
Speech rate, speech rate, speech rate, speech rate, speech rate change.
I'll just tap the screen once more and it'll start reading.
Entering auto mode. Bennett said his lady to him one day, "Have you heard that Netherfield Park is let at last?"
This speech now should be available for any book that's opened, as well as the font and size settings which I've chosen should be available for any other book that I open. It is notable that many books that you can get on the Nook HD Plus don't actually work with speech. Annoyingly, the Nook HD Plus manual, the quick user guide and the user guide, neither of these work with the speech. And a couple of other books that I've tried, when I try turning on the speech, they just give a click sound and the book closes. These show the limitations of the voice. I don't think this is designed for someone who can't see the screen, but it might be useful for someone who wants a bit of assistance with using the screen, and we can only hope that in later versions of the Nook HD Plus, these kinds of limitations are overcome. I hope you found this very short introduction to the Nook HD Plus as an ebook reader useful. This video featured the Nook HD Plus tablet as an e-reader using software version 2.1.0.
RNIB, supporting blind and partially sighted people.